But I just wanted to make a couple of comments about adult literacy. I think working with adults in terms of their own personal literacy is so powerful. It makes a difference with their own lives, with their children's lives, with all their colleagues' lives. It's just amazing. And I have spent many years in California and very proud of the literacy program funded through the state of California. So our first speaker is Vera Parkas from the Philadelphia Office of Adult Education.
So I'm here to talk about the work we do at the Office of Adult Education. It's not quite as fun as some of the stories of work with the kids. I used to do that kind of work with adults, and I miss it a little bit, but I'm now working at a systems level. So the Office of Adult Education was established as a mayoral commission on literacy. It used to be the Mayor's Commission on Literacy, and we were one of the first mayoral commissions in the United States, started in 1983. We've been many things over the years, and we established 5 strategic priorities maybe 5 years ago. It predates me, but they're up here. They're about increasing learner access, building capacity, being an advocate, convening, and sharing information like I'm doing here now. And one of the things that we are struggling to do is doing this in a city where the challenge is great. Philadelphia has the dubious distinction of being the poorest of the 10 largest cities in the US. New census data came out. We're still stubbornly there. We also have a very low rate of digital access, which is a real problem for my portfolio. There's an estimate that over 1 million adults lack 21st century skills, meaning they don't have the literacy and digital skills to really compete for family-sustaining wages. There are 200,000 adults over 18 without a high school diploma, which is about 20% of the adult population. And we have a significant immigrant population, many of whom lack English skills. We are home to several large refugee agencies, and those are the places that tend to get immigrants who haven't really prepared to move to the US, so they tend not to have English skills. So the office a couple years ago sat back and said to itself, how can we really, looking at what our priorities are, looking at the challenges, and looking at the money we have, which is not very much. Our budget is about $1 million every year. We do sometimes get private grants through the mayor's fund, but not a lot. And so we decided to focus on building the system and figuring out ways that we could help the system work better so that the providers would be supported and that we would have more of a system to support adult education in Philadelphia. So one of the biggest things I'm going to spend the most time on is something called My Place, which is a centralized intake system we developed for adult ed, which is, I'm told, is pretty unique. I haven't had the good luck to my boss, Diane Inverso, who conned me into coming here. She's been all over the country and knows a lot more about this than I do, but I'm told that very few cities have this sort of thing. We do a lot of work on digital literacy, that's part of my portfolio, and system building. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of these. So My Place, like I said, is a centralized intake system for adult education. What we found was that folks didn't know how to find adult education programs. I know in some cities, adult ed goes through maybe community college or the library system or even K-12. In Philadelphia, it was just nothing. There were just providers doing their thing, doing individual recruiting, but if somebody knew of a provider and that provider shut down, in 2011, the state went from funding over 25 adult ed providers in Philadelphia to funding only 6. And just last year, they went to funding only 4. So some folks have gone out of business or gone out of the business of adult education, unfortunately. So if folks had known that that place down the street used to provide GED prep, but now don't, the people didn't know. Philadelphia, I don't know if any of you have been there, is a very neighborhood-focused city. And I found when I was working with adult learners, I might say, you can go get this service here, and if it was not someplace they were familiar with, I might as well be telling them to go to Timbuktu. There's not, I heard somebody saying that's right, so Philadelphia. We're trying to get away from that, but it's also hard to get to the places where the resources are if you don't know where they are. So we run My Place, the centralized intake system. There's a single number, and we broadcast it everywhere, shelters, social service. Everybody knows they call or office, and then they get referred to one of 5 campuses that do an intake, get some basic information, and assess them. We use the Test of Adult Basic Education for our native English speakers, and we use CASAS for ESL. And so based on their assessment and sort of the intake, we figure out where they are, geographically, what kind of classes they need, and then they get referred to classes at one of 51 providers. So we have the 4 state-funded providers, which really do the bulk of the work, but we have lots of independent programs, some programs associated with larger nonprofits, associated with churches, but they can all receive learners, have learners funneled to them through our system. What that helps do is creates a network. It makes it easier for learners to find the services that they need. It also helps the providers. They don't have to focus on recruitment because they're getting learners through us. All the partners in the network have access to professional development, and we have a data system that anyone in the network can use. So what happens with adult learners a lot is they bounce from program to program. You know, they start, something happens, a child gets sick, they lose a job, their education is interrupted. But if they're already in the system, when they come back and they go to a different provider, that provider can see, well, they started here, this is where they were. And so that helps create a little bit of continuity, even though the system is a little, disjointed. I'm going back, not forward. The second part of what we do is we run the city's public computer access network, or public computer centers are called key spots. Philadelphia, only about 70% of Philadelphia households have internet access compared to about 80% nationally. And there are some zip codes in Philadelphia where less than half of the households have internet access. And by internet access, they mean smartphones too. So less than half of the households in some zip codes don't even have a smartphone. And in 2019, that means a whole lot in terms of accessing jobs, doing homework, accessing public benefits increasingly. So the key spots are public labs that are open at least 15 hours a week to the public. We partner with a couple of city agencies. The Free Library of Philadelphia operates a couple. They have computer labs in their own libraries, but they also operate some in community centers. The Philadelphia Department of Parks and Recreation operates some in rec centers, and then there are about 30 community-based sites that we oversee. We have funding for 7 of those. I wish it were more, but needs must. And they provide digital literacy classes and job readiness. And these are used a lot by folks who, particularly for job seeking, because increasingly, if you want a job stacking boxes at the Home Depot, you have to apply online. And so people have increasingly seen that they need to go online and need to be able to access computers and learn how to use them. And we've been tracking, that should say 850,000 visitors since they were established. I'm going back instead of forward again. Another aspect of, or I apologize, when this got rendered, it looks a little funny. Of our online, we again, looking at how we could maximize our resources, we decided to start offering online curricula. So we have a system called My Place Online, where folks can take reading and math classes on their own in key spots or at home. It works on smartphones. We have real live instructors that are remote that can connect with people and answer questions and do things like that. But for folks whose work schedules just don't work for them, or who have, for other reasons, can't take classes or are waiting to get into a class, there is an online option. We also have an option called My Prep, which is for folks who might already have a high school diploma but are wanting to get into community college, say, and can't pass the entrance exam. We have an online learning option for them. And finally, in terms of system building, we formed and are the backbone agency and are increasingly trying to get away from being that, the Philadelphia Adult Literacy Alliance, because one of the things we wanted to do is sort of empower the system of adult learners, adult education providers in Philadelphia, and really eventually adult learners would be a great part of the system, actually, to talk about the people advocating for themselves, to bring them together and have them advocate for more funding or more resources or policy changes that might better serve adult learners in Philadelphia. And so we convened that. There is an independent board, which I used to serve on, and we sort of helped launch that and continue to nurture that with the hope that they will eventually become their own independent agency capable of advocating for themselves. We do annual conferences, one on adult education and technology and one for our tutor network. We also train volunteer adult tutors who then work with our partners, and we have an annual conference for them. So that's just an overview of our work. I'll be around if anyone has any questions or wants to talk. Thank you so much to the Library of Congress and to all of you.
Great. Quickly now, we're going to have Shauna Brown from Project READ. She's been the executive director for Project READ, a nonprofit adult literacy program serving Utah County in the great state of Utah since 2001.
We provide one-on-one tutoring for adults in Utah County and really feel like we change lives through literacy by empowering individuals, strengthening families, and building communities. I think those three pillars of our organization are really changing lives because we aren't just changing one life. When we change an adult life, then we have impacts on hundreds of family members every year, whether that be a spouse or a partner. The children in their homes, as they're able to get better jobs, they're going off of public assistance, and they're able to do just great things in their community. So our students are at least 16 years of age, and they speak English proficiently. So we're working with some non-native speakers, but the bulk of my students are native English speakers with high school diplomas. And we're surprised in Utah County, they don't think we have really big universities and a lot of really highly educated people, and they say, what do you mean we have people who can't read and write and access technology and all of the other things that a literacy allows them to do? And I say, yeah, it really does happen. And they need help. We're working really, our population is reading below a 7th grade level. That's really the focus of what our program is. So we provide one-on-one tutoring. We do about 15 to 20 hours of literacy and writing labs every week. And then each student gets an individual assessment and education plan. I think one of the biggest things that we do is empowering and trusting our tutors. I just met with a group last week, and they said, you mean that they'll just help them do what they want to do and need to be able to do? I said, yeah, that's the whole point of doing a one-on-one program, is that we can focus exactly on what the needs, because our children are wonderful and they need to learn so many things, but our adults are really specific in their needs. They might be in the job market, and all of my students are underemployed, so they might be needing to work on job and interviewing skills and resume writing skills and those sorts of things. But I also have a stay-at-home mom, and she comes home with her kids, and they have a backpack full of papers, and she says, what do I do with this? How do I know what I need to read and what I need to respond to, and how can I help my child so that they aren't in the position that I am in right now? I actually got involved in this as a tutor. I was a volunteer tutor when I very first started, and my student changed my life because I was just out of college, and I was tutoring her at a local library, and she was a single mom. She had 2 kids. They were ages 4 and 7. And the day that she walked into our tutoring session with prescription medicine and said, what do I give to my daughters? I said, oh, this is life or death, essentially, for someone who doesn't know how to prescribe medicine to her child. And so we talked about how to read the dosage. And for kids, it's a big deal because you have to know their age, you have to know their weight, you have to know all of these things. And she said, I have no idea how to look at this chart and what to do with it. And I said, oh, friend, we are going to work on this. And that changed my life because I realized we can make a bigger impact than this. It is not just, when I got involved, I think originally I thought, oh, they want to be able to read a book for fun and for pleasure. And that is wonderful. I mean, the day they come in and say, that book was way better than the movie, I said, oh, yes, we got it. But the day that they say that they can fill out a job application online, even for the Home Depot, the day that they say that they can do that, or the day that they come in, I had one student walk in and he dumped all of his mail on my desk. And he said, what is junk and what is not? What can I recycle? What do I need to shred because it has personal information on there? And what do I actually need to pay attention to? How do I pay my bill, or how do I do this? And so that really changed my life. I think one of the other great things that we do is we really try to share our model with others. And so we accredited through Pro Literacy years ago when they had their accreditation system. But we created a Google site when we did that, which we thought was really cool because we shared it with a lot of other adult literacy programs across the country as a really great way for maintaining all of the data for our model and showing what those best practices were. And so there are several adult literacy programs across the country who are all using the same Google site framework to kind of collect all of their information about running the program so that it's replicable, which I love. Really practical outcomes. All of our instructional materials are designed for adults. And back to empowering tutors, they get to work on whatever is the most important thing to that adult. So we have instructional curriculum that we use. We love New Readers Press and other things, but we also really say if they come in with forms from their work, I had 3 students last year who came to me and said, I didn't pass up a promotion this time. And I said, what do you mean pass up a promotion? They said, well, I turned it down the first time because I wasn't sure that I could fill out the paperwork that was required for me to take that promotion. And I said, that is why we're doing what we're doing. That is why we are involved in your life. And so if they're bringing in forms from work, that's what our tutors are working on. If they're bringing in things from home, if they're bringing in a bank statement, we were just talking about one of our students who actually lost 181 pounds after going through our program because she could finally read the food labels. She had never in her life purchased fresh produce because she was on a fixed income and didn't know how to calculate what it would cost her at the register. Because if you're on a fixed income and you think you get a bunch of grapes, she didn't know if it would cost $2 or $8, and that was a big difference to her budget. And so she had never purchased fresh produce. She only bought packaged goods where she knew exactly what it was going to cost her. And so it's having impacts in every area of their life, from their jobs to their health. I had another student who was a fabulous cook and had never written down any of her recipes. And so she and her tutor actually published a cookbook together that she gave to families and friends for Christmas gifts that year. But 90% of our students had gains last year in reading, writing, and math. And I loved the question back here asking about what is literacy? And I feel like literacy is any of the skills that they need to function in society. So whether that's reading skills, whether that's writing skills, whether that's digital literacy skills or health literacy skills, or if they want to be able to, I was at the National Cathedral last night, and if they want to be able to read the text in the hymnal, that's literacy for them. That's what they need to be able to access. One of our students, Ingrid, who now has the literacy skills that she needs to be able to enroll in a CNA program. And for her, we see ourselves as a bridge or a transition program. 9th grade literacy is not going to get you very far, but 9th grade literacy can get you into another program that gets you where you want to go. So Ingrid was able to get some CNA skills, and Irina actually was one who turned down a promotion and was able to take the promotion. She's now a supervisor. She now has a full-time job. She said, I used to have to take my kids with me to, my son with me to my female doctor's appointment. And I did not appreciate him having to help me fill out my paperwork at the doctor's office. But she now has a full-time job with benefits and voted for the first time in the November election. So super happy for her. There's so many myths about adult literacy. I'm always overwhelmed when people walk in and say, well, they're just lazy or stupid and didn't get it the first time. And I say, not so. I've never seen a more dedicated group of students who want to change their lives and then the lives of those around them. I feel like we will not be successful in this world of literacy unless the adults in the lives of our children are also getting the help that they need. And so maybe a conversation I would love to have is about how we can interact better with the children's literacy programs that are going on so that we can have that two-pronged approach, and they're getting support in the schools and the programs, but also at home. And we can make a difference. So thank you so much.
Michelle is the Director of Programs. She's responsible for the overall strategic direction and management of Literacy's domestic and international initiatives, including professional development, membership credentialing, advocacy, and awareness, also other grants and special projects. And Pro Literacy has been in this field for a long time, and they're really a stalwart. So I'm glad to welcome you to the podium, Michelle.
We believe so strongly in the transformative power of adult literacy. Susan mentioned a little bit about our history. It goes back as far as 1930 when Frank Laubach traveled the world, I think 29 countries he visited teaching adults to learn to read in their native languages. Oddly and coincidentally enough, both Frank Laubach started Laubach Literacy in 1955, and Ruth Colvin started Literacy Volunteers of America just short after that, both in Syracuse, New York, which is not a large city. Odd that we were both there. Both had the same mission, and so we formed in 2002 to join forces and combat illiteracy together. The one other thing I would add is that Dr. Robert Laubach, we call him affectionately Dr. Bob, started our publishing division, specifically because he knew that adults didn't want to learn to read with children's books. They really needed that adult context, subject matters that are important to their daily lives. So that's just a little bit about our history. We have a major reach, so we're domestic and international, as I mentioned. We work with about 1,000 member programs across the United States, both Farah's and Shauna's program, Debbie's program in Minnesota, so I'm really happy to see that everybody's here in the room today. We have 30 partners in about 25 countries internationally, and then we also have about 5,000 customers through our publishing division. So we're estimating on a yearly basis we reach about 500,000 learners, and we've charged ourselves with kind of doubling that impact over the next couple of years. We went through a theory of change process over the last couple of years, and it's never quite done, but we landed on a three-pronged approach, I guess I would say, to how we're going to be doing our business going forward and really combating the issue of low literacy and scaling it. And the way that we do that are three ways: increasing the effectiveness and efficiency of adult literacy programs at the local level, increasing access, because we know there are 36 million adults in the United States who can't read. We're reaching a fraction of those. Maybe 2 million are being served right now. As many as another 5 million are on waiting lists. Most programs have waiting lists. We need to do something bigger and better to reach them. And then the third would be the most important, I think, increasing the awareness to ultimately increase the funding for adult literacy. We can't do anything at the local level, state, national level without that additional funding. The first, increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of programs. I listed a few here. I don't need to go through every single one, but some of the ways we do that are largely through our publishing division, New Readers Press, which has over 400 titles. We're really diving strongly into the digital market as well, knowing that we need to do that, possibly go direct to learner to increase the access for more learners across the country. Pro-Literacy Education Network, which we're really proud of, is a hub of professional development for tutors, teachers, I guess that would include instructors, program managers, executive directors, everything to help them on the kind of the cutting edge and latest research to help them run their programs most efficiently. We also have Learn and Share webinars. We have a biennial conference. Our next one will be this September in San Diego, which probably sounds wonderful right now in this January chilly day. We welcome you all. There are cards back on the table so that you can get more information about that. It's just a great professional development opportunity and a lot of peer sharing as well. We are very proud of a brand new tutor training that we released just last year in June, which is, it allows us to deliver quality training to potential tutors in a number of ways. Through traditional face-to-face trainings, we know that works for a lot of tutors or tutors that are interested in providing instruction, but we also know in order to reach more learners, we needed to cut those face-to-face learnings out. A lot of programs don't have the budget to be able to offer those trainings on a regular basis. So we provide it so that a prospective tutor could go through the training completely online and be ready to be able to provide instruction right afterwards. Shauna had mentioned accreditation program. We have quality standards, 16 quality standards that we ask programs to follow. It's not a requirement, but we ask them to follow that so that they know they're running their programs as efficiently as possible and putting sustainability measures in place. We're also in the process of doing a leadership training for executive directors and a brand new research journal, which we're hoping will help instructors with the latest research on instruction. In terms of increasing access, National Book Fund is something where most programs will say the biggest need they have is instructional materials, whether that's digital or print, and they can't get enough. They're using old materials, especially programs that are run by volunteers. So we have a grant program, and we grant about $100,000 each year to programs in the form of books and materials to provide instruction. We also know with that 36 million that the traditional adult education system, libraries can't provide service to all learners that are waiting on waiting lists. So we're trying to infuse adult literacy into non-traditional programs, such as homeless shelters, domestic violence centers, knowing that sometimes those are short-lived stays, but it gets those folks on the road to instruction, and then we're trying to bridge that gap between that short stay to a traditional adult education program so they continue that service. So really bringing the literacy to them rather than making them find it on their own. We're really diving highly into the direct-to-student market. Again, same thing, knowing we have so many people to reach. Technology is, I would say, what we've learned is more slow-moving in the adult education field, but it's here. We have to keep pushing it. It's a fact, and some of that we need to work on is the access. So even internationally, we have worked with World Reader to provide content on their tablets and have the tablets be solar charged. So it helps with that access issue, especially in rural areas. This particular project was in Kenya. We have Leamos, which is Let's Read in Spanish for Spanish-speaking adults. It's a 43-course online program. And I think that the other thing that we would say is partnering with edtech companies. That's a big thing that we've been focusing on is those partnerships at the national, state level anyway, but we know we can't develop all these products on our own with the budget that we have, so we really have to be very careful and intentional about these partnerships. And the last I would say, especially as it relates to programs like I keep calling you Paula, Shauna's, is we really feel the responsibility to make sure we can refer volunteers to local programs. They're doing everything they can on the local level to find them, but we know we need to do that as well. So we have some major volunteer referral programs to do that. And like I said, most importantly, I don't need to go through every single thing, but it's really important for us to advocate on behalf of literacy, both for public funding and private funding, because the diversification of funding for most programs is really, really important. So we do visits to the Hill, we do Hill Days, we serve as a member on the National Coalition for Literacy, which has that larger national conversation of adult literacy organizations and how we can have some movement here, knowing that federal funding's been flat or declining over the last 20 years, which is scary. In addition to that, we do non-traditional forms of media placement. We have a partnership with the Washington Post. We've had an ad in New York Times, but we've also had we've taken some chances. We're working with HBO's Veep and having an adult literacy component to that. So really trying to infuse a lot of different areas to get the word out, knowing that the more we can get the word out, the more people can understand the issue and help us with more money for it. And then I think the last thing I'd round out is to make sure that we're doing that nationally and we can do that on behalf of our programs, on behalf of our network, but we also need to provide local programs or state programs with the tools that they need. Many of these volunteer-run programs don't know how to advocate, and we want to make sure we can help them do that. I talked about a few of these, so I don't really need to go through all of them, but a lot of the lessons learned, or I think that the things that we keep an eye on over the next couple of years as we're working to double our impact are, one, so much more adult literacy research is needed. There's a little out there, 1 minute. There's a little out there, but some of it's old. We know adult literacy matters. As Shauna mentioned, people say, why adults? They're lazy, they had their chance, move on to the children. No, research, old research, but it shows that adults have to be addressed before anything can happen with children. So we know that, but we need to have the research to back that. Technology. We know the programs are behind, but we have to keep finding ways for them to reach the technology, increase their access, and even if it's just a blended learning approach at first, where they're going to a classroom, but then they're going home and they're getting additional practice using technology, they're probably moving a little more quickly than they otherwise would. But we'd love to talk to any organizations that can collaborate with us to have a much more impact. And I think that the question earlier about what can the Library of Congress do, I think echo exactly what I think Alicia said, which is, gosh, we need that large voice to be able to raise more money. So I agree. Thank you, everybody.
So congratulations to our awardees for best practices and literacy. I want to thank you on behalf of Mr. David Rubenstein, who has been a generous supporter of the Literacy Awards. Now, I'd like to invite the Best Practices honorees up for a group photo. The 2018 winners of the Literacy Awards, 3 of the organizations were recognized at the Library of Congress National Book Festival Gala, and we want to honor them once again.
Well, thank you very much. This prize was very, very meaningful to us. We have been working over 50 years with this population of children who are also, they all come from very impoverished families. And it was like a very significant reward for us to be recognized all these years' work. Thank you.
Well, obviously, this is not any one person's work that we do, but on behalf of all of us who are working in schools around the country who have the hopes and dreams of our children at our heart every day, I think it's important to be thinking about both what we're doing outside of schools, but also what are schools doing to both help our students and really encourage them to enter adulthood with a love of reading. So I hope you send everybody our way to tell them how important it is. Thank you.
Well, they heard from me all morning. I was quite chatty. So maybe I'll just say, on behalf of Reading is Fundamental, our board of directors, the communities and children that we serve to drive literacy outcomes, thank you very much.
And thank all of you. Even though you said you were chatty, we can never be chatty enough about the importance of literacy. And I'm so glad that the phrase love of reading was used, because yes, it'll help you get work. Yes, it'll do all of these things. But what it really can do is open your mind, your heart, and your world. So thank all of you, and thank you for letting us do all of this.